So we're going to get going. Good morning and welcome to the Property Sisters UK. We are a group of experienced female property developers and investors, and we take action and we seek to learn from one another, leveraging from all of our skills within this wonderful, supportive community. We hold these brunch sessions once a month on the first Saturday of the month. Today, you're going to hear all about how to perform all you are in property, from professional property investor, educator, and expert in performance, sharing her tips on public speaking, whether that's in person or on video. Jo Akhgar will walk you through the steps of how to make and edit clips that people will want to engage with. After Jo's presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So to ensure we get through as many of these questions, please pop them in the chat box and Jo will answer them at the end.
Who is this Jo Bird? I'm actually a professional speaker, and I'm attached to an organisation called Fielding Financial, member of that organisation, and I help make decisions about the education. I do loads of teaching in many basic level and an advanced level. I've run networks. I've won awards in property and property education. Most of you guys, you lovely property sisters, have been on the podcast, more of you on it as well. But more recently, I've launched myself as a performance coach, and I'm going to be explaining more about that as we go through this morning. A little bit of background about me, so that you understand where this performance element comes. I'm going to just take you through the chapters of my life to explain how I got to where I got to, both personally and certainly in property. So I went to school like everyone else did, both here in the UK and New Zealand, because my mum's a Kiwi. And I got to the end of high school back in the UK, didn't know university to do a degree in Spanish and performance. Bit of a weird combination. That's a very strange degree, but you know, it's what I did, and I'm not stupid, because when you do a year abroad, so that was fantastic. I enjoyed my year abroad in Spain, and got to the end of my life, so decided I was going to do a master's degree in performance studies, but again, didn't really get me a career, didn't know, how I could use that, so I about life and go traveling around in a camper van for 4 months. So that's what I did. Had a brilliant time myself, did all the things you're supposed to do when you're traveling, got back and had no my parents and needed to get myself one of these, landed into the public sector after a few years, and then decided I was going to go back to university again for the third time. And this time it was to do a PhD in performance studies. After I actually stopped that, and that was the right decision for me, because I wanted to teach, wanted to do, but that journey just wasn't for me. I was self-funded around my studies, and I'd fallen out of love with my subject, so I decided to stop. University sector, and jumped from contract to contract to contract, and in fact, I actually got engaged, and I was like, hurrah, this is brilliant, exciting time. Weddings cost money, and I needed to get myself another one of these, so I ended up getting another job in the university sector. That came to an end, and guess what I did? I got another university sector, and this was really me up until about 30, and I'd never got my ducks in a row, never thought about the future, and I certainly hadn't got into property at this point. So I was do before property, which was kind of in the rat race, going around a hamster, all the rest of it. This was one of my last jobs. It was at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, health research manager. Absolutely nothing to do with my degree, but enjoyed it, but was still not doing what I was supposed to be doing with my life. Into the performance thing, and on the personal side, I also danced flamenco. That was just me shoehorning a little bit of self-promotion in there to kind of give you an illustration of my performance background. But since massively changed, and now I'm big time in property, and I teach it, I live and breathe it, and of course now I want to teach you how you perform it, and that's what this presentation is all about. What property has allowed me to do is step back from the day job And that also allowed me to focus more on what it is I should be doing on this planet. And that's how I've got to where I am now. So that's a little bit of background around me. But I think what I wanted to tell you was the performance element of my background has been suppressed for many years because I completely disassociated it from my property journey. And I never should have done that, because what I've realized is that performance element, that performance background has been integral to everything that I do in property and have done in property. And this is what I want to share with you this morning. Performance is in everything I do as a property investor. So whether it's speaking to letting agents, whether it's speaking to estate agents, whether it's attending networking events, whether it's teaching in the classroom, whether it's getting up on stage, being a keynote speaker, whether it's talking to camera and doing social media, it is at the heart of everything I do. And I would suggest it's also at the heart of everything you do as professional property investors too. So I'm a bit of a bookworm, and I always like to look at what terms mean and understand the etymology. Like what is the word performance all about? Because for me, performance has so many connotations. But when I looked on Google, it summarized the definitions beautifully. So performance as a word means an act of presenting a play, a concert, or other form of entertainment. So let's scrap the entertainment thing for a minute. It's really the act of presenting something to an audience. Okay, so I want you to bear that one in mind. The second definition is it's the action or process of performing a task or a function. Now, we do that in everyday life, whether it's property, whether it's personally, whether it's in our professional day jobs if you're still working. Getting something done and performing it is absolutely essential. It's task management. But then breaking it down a little bit further, performance has other meanings. So it's a task or operation seen in terms of how successfully it's performed. So there's a quality element to it. So it's also the capability of something, a product or a vehicle. It is also the extent to which, and I found this fascinating when I looked at this, an investment is profitable. How is the asset performing? Yeah, it's even down to how your properties perform. And also how you use language, what a speaker actually says, including hesitations, false starts, and errors. So I'm hoping you can start to see how much performance is related to how you operate as an investor, because all of this is relevant, okay? And this will be peppered through the presentation this morning. The anxiety I think I've had around performance, and the reason I've suppressed it for so long, is because when you say the word performance, there is almost like a sense that somebody is playing a role, that it's sort of like you're not being authentic if you are performing. Does that make sense? Like you're, on some level, you're creating an illusion that you're not being yourself. But based on the definitions that I've just given you, I would argue that performing is, number one, getting a task done, which we all know is absolutely crucial when you're investing in property because it's what keeps you moving forward. Number two, it's delivering it well. So it's that quality element of what it is you're doing. And as a result of getting both of those in check, you are achieving results. And for me, those three elements are integral to being a successful property investor and how we come across to whoever it is we're dealing with, whether it is a private investor or whether it is speaking at a networking event or talking to a letting agent, estate agent, or even a vendor in a property. So what I wanted to do was borrow a model to explain how important how you perform is when it comes to representing yourself, representing your property business and just representing your brand to other people as you go forward, whether that's on screen and you're doing social media stuff, or whether that's in person and you're dealing with whatever stakeholder is involved in your business. And I've borrowed this beautiful model from a guy called Brian Main. Now, some of you may have heard of Brian Main, some of you may never have heard of Brian Main. Brian Main is a practitioner in a system called goal mapping, and I am a qualified practitioner of his work. He's an incredible gentleman. He's super zen. If you ever meet him, he's wonderful. And he's designed a system that is all around setting goals, that stimulates the brain, both the left side and the right side of the brain, the left side through words and the right side through pictures. So feel free to look him up if you wish. But what I love is he created this model, and it's called the bicycle of ability. And he says, in order to be successful at anything, you need knowledge and skills. So you need to know how to do something. That's the back wheel of the bicycle. Number two, you need to get along with people. So you need to put yourself out there, and you need to be able to network and leverage skills of others. You need to get on the bicycle and take action in order for anything to progress. You need to know where you're cycling to, so you have to have a very clear goal in mind. But the thing that struck me most about this particular model, and this is what we're going to be focusing on this morning for this presentation, is who we are being when we are cycling. So this is your drive, your attitude, and your confidence. It's what we call the DAC factor. And this has to come across in everything that you do as a property investor, because it's what's going to set you apart from the others out there. So over lockdown, what happened was I had time to reflect on me. And in fact, it was going on Amy's podcast, the Focus on Why podcast, that really caused me to take stock of my background, how much I'd suppressed my performance background, and how I could actually integrate that into my property investing career, but also use that experience to help others perform at their best. So what I do now is I help property investors, regardless of what stage of their journey they are at, perform at their best, to gain confidence, showcase their talents, and grow their business. Okay, so it took me a long time to realize that that was what I was supposed to be doing. But now that I understand how much performance is at the heart of what I do, I can now help others integrate that into their investments and their investing journey too. Because what I ultimately want is people to be able to perform all that they are in property. Because let's face it, and this is a conversation that keeps coming up on Property Jam, the podcast that I co-host with Matt and Niall, this is a thing. We are not one thing. We are like a spectrum of colours. We will be mums, sisters, daughters, we'll be, we've got careers, we'll have jobs, we'll be property investors, we'll be public speakers, we'll be networkers, we're a whole spectrum of colours. So when you are performing as a property investor, you need to know which colours of yourself you are performing and to whom you are performing that to. So this presentation this morning has been really, really challenging to put together, because honestly, I could chat for years on this topic, like years and years and years and years and years. So I've had to kind of scale it back, and it will be less about how you do it. It's going to be more about the key things that you need to be considering and the key questions that you should be asking every single time you perform. Specifically for today, I was asked to think about how you perform when you are talking to camera, because it's a weird situation when you do that. It's a very false situation. And so going forward, so many of us are having to do a lot of self-promotion on social media, and do a lot of camera work. And that's the way the world is evolving. And it's a great thing, it's a fantastic thing, but you need to be doing that with confidence. In order to do it with confidence, it's one of those things that you have to step back and really think about. It's not just putting content out there, video content for the sake of putting it out there. There is a huge amount of thinking and planning and preparation that goes into it. So all of that consideration, all the things you need to bear in mind is what I'm going to be taking us through this morning. So with that in mind, I'm going to liken it to a very traditional theatre setting. So let's really get into performance. And to do that, I'm going to reference what I call all the P's. So when you're looking at a traditional performance, there will always be a purpose behind it. So think about a play. A play has a message. A play has a designated social message, or it might be a cultural message, it might be the playwright's message. But either way, there is core content that is going out there to a wider audience. So you also need to think that when you are going in front of a camera, what is your purpose? What is your message? The other thing is preparation. Like I say, not just throwing yourself in front of a camera, this is the rehearsal aspect of performing. Preparing, planning, getting all of that on point and in check ahead of going live is essential. Then there's the practice element. And I say that this is more like the dress rehearsal, really, really refining your skills in front of a camera before you go live. And then there's the actual performance itself, which is going live on camera for real. The other element, and this sits at the background of everything that you will be doing, is thinking about the people you are performing to. So this is your audience effectively. And what I'm going to do this morning, this is like the agenda. This is what we're going to be running through: the purpose, the preparation, the practice, the performance, and who you are performing to. So let's talk about purpose first. So this is the message. And when you're doing anything, you don't just do it for no reason. What I want you to consider as professional investors, as performers, which you are, is why are you doing it? So are you putting video content out there to raise your profile? Now, most of us are doing that, certainly within the Instagram community, because, you know, that's how most of us have got connected in the first place. So what are you promoting and how are you promoting it? Is it a product? Is it a service? Is it just pushing your brand out there so that people are aware of who you are and what it is you do as an investor? Are you looking to raise finance? Ultimately, regardless of which of those elements you are pushing, you are looking to make money. Now, some people get quite uncomfortable with that concept, but if you're profile raising, the reason you're doing that is for credibility. Credibility means generating business leads. Business leads ultimately ends up making money. Yeah. Same with promoting who you are, your brand. Ultimately, people will be signposted to you, and that will grow your business and generate money. If you've got a product or service, again, that will generate revenue. And the same with raising finance. It is all about money. And what I want to say is, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. There's no shame in it, because ultimately all of us are looking to produce some form of profit. It might not be why you're in property in the first place. It might be a byproduct. It might just be something that happens as a byproduct or an outcome of what you do. But really, when it comes to speaking on camera, that should be at the back of your mind, that everything you're doing will have some form of financial outcome. And that is a fantastic thing. Okay, so it's not something to be ashamed of. Once you've considered what it is you're doing and why it is you're doing it, why are you speaking to camera, why are you putting video content out there, you then have to think about who it is you are speaking to. So this is considering the audience, yeah? Who is this video content for? One of my biggest bugbears is just seeing constant Instagram or, you know, Facebook lives of people who are just sharing content for what feels like the sake of it. You know, it doesn't speak to me. And if I'm looking at video content and I don't connect to it, or it doesn't speak to me personally, I'm not going to see that video all the way through. If you know who your audience is and you know what it is they are looking to hear, then you can pitch it so that it speaks to those people directly, which means they will see your video content through from inception right through to the end. And that's essential. Who cares about your message? Who is your avatar? Who is the ideal person that you are trying to reach with your message? Is it fellow property investors because you're trying to create credibility and respectability with your peers? Is it somebody that you're trying to reach because you can help them in some way? Are you looking to attract private investments? Okay, fine. But what does that individual look like? What is it that they need to hear from you? And how are you going to message that correctly? And how do they benefit from your message? So when you're putting those messages together and you're thinking about who will be listening and watching, building into your content 3 to 5 outcomes that they will achieve from watching your video content is essential. They need something that they can tangibly take away from it. Otherwise, you're not going to hold their interest. And when you're doing that, because any old fool, I guess, could say that you will achieve X, Y, and Z from this video that I'm presenting to you, what evidence can you provide that supports that? So if maybe you want to reference testimonials, maybe you want to showcase, references that people have given you, or you just want to hop onto Instagram quickly and say, someone's just left me an amazing review. Always give social proof and build that into any video content that you put out there, because people will take notice of that. Even if it's not initially, over time, they will build a credible picture of you. So it's all about giving your audience what it is they want to see and what it is that they want to hear from you, all the whilst building your own personal credibility. The next thing you need to think about is, where do they live? Which platform does your ideal target audience member live on? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it YouTube? And then once you've done that due diligence and once you've done that research, you can then plan how you are going to deliver that video content and on which platform and at what time, which we're going to go into more detail in a moment. Yeah. So again, it's very easy to just think, well, because I'm already on LinkedIn or I'm already on Instagram, I'm just going to start sharing content there. But if the people that you're trying to reach don't live there, what's the point? Yeah, there's no point doing that. So often for me, the way I tend to think about the different social media platforms, YouTube is great for just broadcasting and self-promotion. LinkedIn is great for generating business leads. Instagram is absolutely fantastic for showcasing what you do because it's so visual. And Facebook is great for creating a community and communicating with groups and sort of really creating what I'd call a hub of interactivity. But again, you need to decide which is appropriate for your particular avatar and then start to broadcast there. And if you want to then expand that, by all means do so, but you have to start somewhere. Okay, let's move on to preparation. So this is the rehearsal side of things, and this is probably the meatier chunk of the presentation this morning, because how you prepare for any form of video content that you put out there is essential. It's not just jumping on, it's not just talking, it's really, really planning and thinking it through. So when you're thinking about your content, it's very tempting, certainly, to overpopulate a video, because you can talk for hours on topics that you are experts in, but that doesn't mean that someone wants to hear that for a long period of time. So you are better to pepper and not cram too much information into your videos. often what happens is people put videos together and they'll be, wanging on for minutes and minutes and minutes. In reality, what you could have done is taken that content and broken it down over multiple videos, meaning it would be a series of videos and not just one. So once you've planned your messages, you're going to start to have an idea of what it is you want to say. So think about how you could break that down. And you could break that down into multiple videos. And then once you've done that, schedule it. How often are you going to be sharing those videos? Is it going to be, say, 3 times a week? And is it going to be a series? And is it going to have a theme that you are speaking to? All of this requires planning and thinking through. Are you launching something? And if you are launching something, maybe you're launching a deal and you're looking to raise private finance, or maybe you're in deal sourcing and you're looking to kind of launch that as a business, when is that launch happening? And you need to set that date and you need to work backwards from that date, maybe say 6 weeks, and you need to give yourself time to prepare video content that speaks to that launch. Okay, so again, I could speak for days on each one of these elements, but what I want to do this morning is just get you in the headspace of all the things you should be considering, all the questions you should be asking yourself when it comes to preparing your content. Linked to that is when. So you've formulated your content, you've planned your content, and you've scheduled your content, but when is it relevant to the target audience that you are trying to reach? So again, just because it's convenient to you on a Wednesday at, say, 2 p.m. to put content out there, that might not be when your ideal avatar is active. So you need to do some due diligence. So looking at the analytics and the intelligence that's readily available on all the different social media platforms as to when the people that you're trying to communicate with are active and are most likely to see your videos. With that in mind, and once you have that intelligence, how often will you be posting video content? And one thing I would say is don't overpost. Sort of posting videos every single day you can get sort of viewer fatigue. Okay, so what you want to do is keep people active, keep people looking at your profile without bombarding them with too much. So 3 times a week is probably quite a good measure, particularly if you're on the lead up to a launch, or you're starting to build your brand, or you're starting to promote your property business. What? Okay, so this is a big one. When you're doing video content, one thing you need to consider is whether or not you should be pre-recording your videos and releasing them, or whether or not you should be recording them live. So you're jumping onto, Instagram Live, or you're doing a Facebook Live, because they actually create a very different impact. Okay. Now, if we're thinking about how platforms perceive your video content, the lives tend to get pushed further. So Facebook, for example, really likes people doing Facebook lives. And when you do a live, Facebook will actively push you. You'll get pushed into the algorithm and you'll get a much broader reach. Okay, the same with Instagram. However, that's not necessarily always appropriate. So when you're doing a live, it's often quite ad hoc, it's often got an informality about it, it's often quite off the cuff, and it's not necessarily going to be polished, and it's not necessarily going to be staged. And that, by the way, is absolutely fine, but it's not necessarily appropriate for every bit of video content that you put out there. Because if you're looking to do something that's a bit more edited, a little bit more polished, a little bit more refined, where maybe you're showcasing a project, or you're speaking to a particular topic and you want it to be a bit slicker, you're not going to get that same feel, that same look if you're doing it live. Okay, so there is an argument that when you are thinking about the format, that you need to consider that first. Okay, you always need to think about that first before you actually go ahead and record, or you do it in a live format. Now, lives work brilliantly when you're doing things like site visits, or you're showcasing a project, you know, you're walking around. People love that kind of stuff. You know, you're mid-refurb, people can see you're actively out there in the field, you're investing, it builds your credibility. But if you're looking to, say, I don't know, maybe you're looking to privately raise finance, and you're trying to sort of really showcase your business and almost do like a show home, doing a live is not going to give you that sort of finessed final product. So that should be something that is far more constructed, far more staged, and far slicker. So with that in mind, if you are doing a live, just sort of thinking about that format, is it going to be static or is it going to be active? So are you moving around or are you sat? Okay, because that can have a huge impact on how well received your video is. One of my biggest bugbears is people who are trying to sort of speak very seriously or really showcase what they do, and they're wandering out in a field somewhere and there's all this noise, or there's, you know, traffic, or and you can't hear what they're saying, and it doesn't suit, you know, the background and the movement doesn't suit the message. Okay, so always think, should I be still, should I be active, what is it I'm trying to say, and is the setting that I find myself in matching what it is I'm trying to say? Because often there's a disconnect, and I will just tune out if that's the case. You need to consider layout. Are you doing it in portrait? Are you doing it in landscape? And again, that will very much depend on the platform that you are operating within. So you need to think about that ahead of time. And you also need to consider the duration. Everyone's busy. Yeah, everyone has a limited amount of time that you can hold their attention, particularly on social media platforms. So when you are doing videos, you don't really want them to be any longer than 90 seconds. And of course, you know, if you're doing a story on Instagram, for example, you were limited to that 1 minute, that 60-second window anyway. And that's no bad thing, because that forces you to get your message out there really sharply, really concisely. So, and that's just good practice. And again, we'll come back to tips as to how you get as concise as you possibly can shortly. You also need to think about the format. Are you sharing this video as a story, or are you sharing this video as a post? And again, that is entirely at your discretion, and it's entirely, you're at the mercy of your audience there. Who's watching? What kind of engagement do you typically get? What's going to create more impact? So something I also get people to think about is the props. What kind of props do you need? So one of my little props that I tend to use a lot is a tripod. So one of my biggest bugbears, again, is when people are walking around and they've got their phone and they're speaking directly to camera, and it's shaking all over the place and it's wobbly, and you know, you're not getting a clear image of what it is they're trying to show, and you know, you almost get a little bit of motion sickness because you feel like you're sort of moving around with them. When you have a tripod and you're doing something static, you don't have to hold your phone. So instantly your hands are free to gesticulate, and you can create a much more polished video. If you are active and you're walking around, just having a tripod to hold is a steadier vehicle, which means that your viewer is less likely to get that seasickness as you move around. You've got to think about lighting as well. Lighting is key. So even me, as I speak to you now, I've just got a ring light that's attached to my laptop, and I can also attach it to my mobile phone. I take it everywhere I go, so that regardless of whether I'm on site at a property, whether I'm in a venue in Bristol and I'm filming a webinar, my face is lit up. Number one, irons out the wrinkles, always makes you look better. So that's a really good thing. But number two, it just means that the light and the attraction is on your face, not necessarily what's going on in the background. Because ultimately, like I say, people are buying into you and your video content. Things like seats, are you sitting down and, presenting, or are you standing up and presenting? These are all things you have to plan through, and this is very much dependent on the type of video content that you're sharing, and you need to consider all of this ahead of time. The next thing is where. So I alluded to this a moment ago. When you're doing video content, is it appropriate based on the message that you are on site? Are you on your property project? Is it appropriate for that to happen based on what it is you're trying to do? Should it be in a studio space? Does it require that level of professionalism so that you do have the right lighting, the right staging, the right acoustics? Are you inside or are you outside? And again, if you are outside, please, please, please be mindful of sounds, wind, traffic, wildlife. I mean, you get people wandering around all the time. All of a sudden you hear the squawk of a seagull. It can be incredibly distracting. And again, you'll lose a viewer just like that because they don't want to hear that. Also, are you at home? And are you broadcasting from home? And if you are, and again, this we all saw inside everybody's houses via Zoom over the pandemic, people make snap judgments about you based on the space that you are in. So when you are creating video content and it is within your own space, is it set up the way you want it? Are you showing people aspects of yourself and your life that you might not necessarily have considered or would want to share? So just make sure that everything is how you would want it to be when you're putting video content together. So the washing that's hanging out in the background, get rid of it. The bed that's unmade, make sure it's made. Just choose your room and your background carefully because people will make judgments of you. It's just a thing. The acoustics, high ceilings, all of that. If it's too echoey, again, for a viewer, that can be a problem. So test the sound, yeah. Lighting is absolutely key, and I can't emphasize enough that having the right props when you're doing video content, like a little ring light like the one I've got on now, or a full blown ring light with a tripod, again, all of that is just going to add to the quality of the video content that you're putting out there. Let's move on to practice. So this is the dress rehearsal. This is like the night before you go live, okay? So this really is me sharing my hot tips with you because I think there's a lot of anxiety around putting video content out there. And before you go live, if you are anxious about it, just practice. It's as simple as that. You're never going to go live with a play unless you've done your dress rehearsal. And when I say dress rehearsal, I mean literally dress rehearsal. Get yourself in the zone as if you are doing that video content live, like it's going to be the actual performance. And one tip I can give you is to do your initial practices in front of a mirror. So when you're looking directly at a camera, it is incredibly bizarre, particularly if it is on your phone, because you can see yourself. So you need to get comfortable with seeing yourself. And to do so, look in the mirror first. You'll start to notice strange things that you do. And it might be strange things with your hands, strange things with your face. It might be you'll start to pick up how you behave in front of a camera, any awkwardness, and you can start to correct that behavior. But you also get used to seeing your face, which initially is incredibly uncomfortable. It's like when you hear a voice recording back for the first time. Start to record, do some test runs and watch them back. And when you watch them back, I want you to analyze your pitch, how you're coming across with your pace. Take it slower than you think you should, how you're positioning yourself, where your point of focus is. Are you staring at the actual lens? Are your eyes all over the place? And by the way, there is nothing wrong with that because it has to be an accurate reflection of you. You also need to take note of your and tut rate. So all of us it's a natural part of speaking, but if you're over you'll catch it when you're doing your test recordings, okay? So you just need to practice not And also people do this a lot. It's a nervous thing. So if you're tutting a lot, you'll clock it on your test runs and you can start to eradicate it and practice getting rid of out of your dialogue. Remember, there's something about being polished. You never want your content to be too polished, particularly if you're doing lives. But sometimes it can be too polished. And if it's too polished, people don't like it because it doesn't feel like it's being authentic to you. And again, you will pick that up when you are doing your test recordings. And also check to see if your personality is coming through. Do you seize up in front of the camera and all of a sudden the essence of you disappears because you've suddenly got really awkward and you're not conveying your true personality? If you pick that up in your test recording, think, right, I need to go back and I need to improve that and I need to inject a bit more of me. If you're nervous about presenting to camera, have some prompts. These can be flashcards that you have behind the camera. So just bullet points of key things that you want to remember, or you can just, literally write on your hand. You can have something that's just in front of you. It's a bit like a crutch, just takes the pressure away. You don't have to have the pressure of remembering everything as you're delivering it live. And as I said, when you're doing your dress rehearsal and your practices, I want you to stage it as if it's the real deal so that you feel ready and prepared. Now let's move on to performance. And this is where you are going to go live. Listen, you're going to have the anxiety, okay? Particularly if you're not used to doing this. It's okay. Let the anxiety happen. It's absolutely fine. Because remember, in reality, only 15% of your audience, so your following or your network on that particular social media platform, on average, will see what you're doing. So you can instantly just take a breath and realize that most people aren't going to see it anyway. But you've got to start somewhere. So put your content out there and go for it. And this is the element of Brian Main's bicycle of ability and who we are being, our drive, our attitude, and our confidence that I want to really focus on now. Because when you go live, you want to make sure on the practical side that everything is set, that it's staged, that you've got your lighting in place, your background in place, or the surround in place if you're doing a live, that everything that you planned has come together. But the who we are being, the real drive, attitude, and confidence stuff comes down to how you are feeling as an individual, okay? Is your outfit on point? Does it represent you? Yeah? Don't be wandering around in a corporate suit on a building site if that's not how you would typically dress. Yeah? If you're not corporate, don't go corporate. Your outfit, number one, has to make you feel appropriate and has to make you feel good. But it also has to represent you and possibly your brand as well. So really think about what you're wearing before you do any video content. It's a thing that people forget all the time. Yeah. Guys as well, if you're into makeup, make sure you make up some point, or if you don't wear makeup, don't wear it, but actually makeup with any form of camera work stands you in good stead. And one tip that I learned was always go a little bit heavier when you're doing camera work, because it just, like anything, it's like when you go for a photo shoot, you go for a heavier makeup. The same is true as when you're doing video content as well. It's a thing. Perfume, for me, this is a big one. I like to smell good. I like to feel my absolute best whenever I'm delivering anything, whenever I'm teaching, whenever I'm doing video content, whenever I'm at a networking event. Whatever makes you feel the best version of yourself, do it. For me, fragrance is a big one. Same with my hair. I always like to make sure it's on point. If your hair's going crazy and it's all over the place, unless that's your look and it suits your brand, fine. But for me, I like to make sure that it's on point and it's in check. And hygiene, stupid things. Your teeth, make sure your teeth are done. Make sure you're feeling clean and ready to go, because the point is this: when you feel your best, you perform at your best. And that is true of any form of performance that you do. And look, the first time you do this, whatever kind of content you're putting out there, it's not going to be perfect, but done is better than perfect, because all that will happen is it will get better from there the more you practice it. And perhaps you won't need to put in the same level of preparation every single time. It will start to become slick, okay? And all you need to do is refine, learn from the video content that you put out there, listen and look at the feedback that you're getting from your target audience, refine it, build in the feedback, and then go again. Because remember, people buy into you, not your deals. So what you have to do is to learn to perform at your best. That's everything from me. Oh, look at me. I'm 3 minutes over. That's not too bad, Amy. I kept it fairly in check. If you want to get hold of me, if you want to know more, the best way to get hold of me is on Instagram. And my handle is Jo Akhgar. So yeah, any questions, anything at all, feel free to get in touch. I'd love to help you.
Thank you so much, Jo. That was an absolutely fantastic presentation, really excellent tips on performance. I'm sure we'll all be able to take away today. I've got a couple of questions from Claire Norwood. She wants to know if you train people in these skills.
I do. So basically over lockdown, I have been really thinking about packages that I can provide to people to support them with all of this stuff. Because really, this is what people come to me about all the time. I mean, I teach the bricks and mortar stuff, but really it's normally around confidence. And it's confidence putting presentations together, it's confidence speaking at networking events, and it's confidence often raising private finance with individuals. So beyond the investor pack, it's how you are presenting and performing that investor pack. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm designing a masterclass. So this will be an online format, certainly at the moment because of all of the pandemic restrictions. I'm designing a masterclass, and I'm also writing content. I'm going to do online courses because, like I said, I could talk on this topic for years. So bear with me, all of that is in production at the moment. But in the interim, what I'm offering people is one-to-one coaching. So in whatever aspect they need support with, and feel free to get in contact with me via Insta, and we can chat that through and have a bit of a what do you need phone call.
Perfect. And another question from Sam. She wants to know, what do you think of supporting images and captions, etc., for the static edit videos?
Yeah, I think that's great, actually. I think it depends on what it is that you're trying to showcase. I think if it adds value to the video content, then by all means do it. I think it's a really good idea, and that works particularly well on Instagram because it's such a showcasing platform. One thing I didn't mention, and it's something that I think is really important, is subtitling. Obviously, this has to be for your static content and your pre-recorded content. It is a good idea to have subtitles because your video content needs to be inclusive first and foremost. But also sometimes people don't actually listen, they read. So subtitling and having all those captions in place, if you have the time, is a hot tip. So I suggest you do it. There's loads of different platforms you can use for that.
Yeah, are there any that you'd highlight? I think Sam Rathling mentioned rev.com. Is there anything that you use?
Oh, damn you for putting me on the spot. I can't remember the names of the ones I use. I'll get back to you on that. I'll come back to the group. There's 3 that I use and I can't remember one of them.
And also for the lives and video on Instagram and Facebook, do you recommend using filters and GIFs?
Filters. I'm not a fan of filters. I think filters were super amazing about 2 years ago because everyone loved it because it ironed out all the creases. I don't think you need filters with good lighting. I think people are really aware of filters nowadays, and if you're over filtered, it gives that message of lack of authenticity, and I think that's something that you should dispel. GIFs, yeah, I mean, I think GIFs, I'm a big fan of. Filters, no, I think is the simple answer there.
And Claire's just typed into the chat that Capwing is a good ideal platform for subtitles, and that's Kapwing.
Yeah, that's not one I use actually, but I need to come back to you with the ones I do use. Yeah.
Great. Well, that's all the questions we've had. We've had a huge amount of positivity regarding how fantastic your presentation is, Jo. So again, thank you so much from all the property sisters and the little sisters here.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you so much. And I'm really sorry that I have to dash off, but I've got 15 incredible students in the neighbouring room that I now have to go and educate in the world of property. So I'm going to bid you farewell.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jo.
Enjoy, and good luck, Helen, and good luck, Claire. You're going to be amazing. Love you guys.